Hello everyone and welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is, my lord, the 24th of November. How did things get so late in the day, so autumny already, just a month to go to Christmas Eve? And it's beginning to feel a lot like autumn now, isn't it? Anyway, the wind, the rain, the cold and everything, we can settle down for our half hour and enjoy a little bit of a delve into the ancient world. So thank you all so much for coming along and joining. As ever, we are so excited to see your fantastic questions that have come in over the last couple of weeks since we met, and we're going to get through as many of them as we can in the next half hour. And we also, of course, have a few announcements to make. It is this week a prize week in which we look back at the questions that we have been able to answer over the last couple of Q&As, and we pick a winner. One of the questions that has really got us thinking about the ancient world and thinking about things in an entirely different way that we've enjoyed as a result, opening up a whole new aspect perhaps that we hadn't thought about. And that winner, of course, gets a prize. Hello to you all. Hello, Patricia. Hello, Vicky. Hello, William from Hawaii. And I bet you it's not wintertime there, cold and wet and rainy, but please don't tell us that it's really beautiful and sunny and hot. Otherwise, we'll probably all die of jealousy. Hello, Mark. Hello, everyone. Hello, Rosie. Hello. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. Helen, you're in a wet Cumbria. I feel you. Yeah, absolutely. The rain, the wet, the cold, the miserableness. Elizabeth, hello. Shelley, hello. So we're looking back at our Q&As and the questions that we've answered over the past couple of weeks, and we are picking a winner. Now, there have been some fantastic questions, and we've got through quite a number actually over the last couple of Q&As. But for me, one stands out. And that was Carolyn Nicklin. Congratulations, you are our prize winner this time. Carolyn's question, if you remember, it was she'd lost her voice. But did we kind of collectively have any suggestions from the great orators of the classical period as to what she can do to get it back? She reserved the right not to do anything that harms a frog, etc. And we came up with some rather weird and wonderful, if you remember, remedies for how to deal with the lost voice or sore throat from the ancient world. So we were having good fun there, looking at some of the slightly bizarre things that the ancients did. And carrying on in that vein today, we've got some great questions coming up that will open up some even more bizarre aspects of what the ancients did. So, Carolyn, you are our winner today. Many congratulations. And you have a choice. So, going forward, you can either have, if you've got a young one who might like to start their journey learning about the ancient world, we can send you a copy of Life in Ancient Greece, which is great for Key Stage 2 and 3. Or we can send you a signed and kind of written with it, whatever message you like, little Professor Michael Scott book insert as well. So get in touch, let us know, Carolyn, what you would prefer, and kind of voice is back. There you are. You're indeed here as the winner. Poor Carolyn Nicklin, lovely to see you. Glad your voice is back. Did you try any of the ancient remedies, and was that actually responsible for bringing your voice back? I'm sure it was. But congratulations to you, and do get in touch to let us know what you would like. And Lee, you've got your Year 6 Latin class listening in. Absolutely fantastic. Next time someone in the class has lost their voice, try a few of these ancient remedies that we were discussing. And going forward, we've got a question about hairdressing. So there'll be some ancient hairdressing techniques that you can bring to bear as well for the class. I challenge Lee Edmonds' Year 6 Latin class to all come in with an ancient Roman or Greek hairstyle of their choice before Christmas. Yes, that is my challenge, and if you can send us a picture of the results, it would be fabulous. Right, so let's get on with our questions. Congratulations to Carolyn, indeed. Now, it's before we get going on the questions, I have to tell you, as a number of people of you have been writing in and asking kind of whether there is going to be a Professor Michael Scott calendar for this Christmas. I have to say to you, sadly, that this Christmas we are not going to be able to bring forth a calendar. It has just been overwhelmed by the number of things that I've had to get done for work, for my day job at Warwick in the last couple of months, and so have not been able to find the time to actually be able to put in the effort that is required to bring together a calendar of the quality that we would want to pass on to you. So there will be no calendar this Christmas to fill all of your stockings. I am very, very sorry, but we will do our best to bring it back for next Christmas. Instead, what we can offer is a signed and addressed and written message on one of my little book inserts. So Professor Michael Scott book insert that then sticks very nicely into whatever book you like. You can have it addressed to someone to give for Christmas, and you'll be able to get hold of these and send your messages in. Either you can get in touch through the Facebook page, or you can email michaelscottacademic@gmail.com with your message and address, and we can get all these things out to you. So thank you for bearing with us this Christmas, that there is no calendar for 2023, but all fingers crossed for 2024. Now, Carolyn, you're making a question about my hair. Well, indeed, Roman male hair. Now, this is a question that came in from Phil Richards, and it was actually asked live last time, but we didn't get a chance to respond to it. And it was, did the ancients change their hairstyle very often? This is an excellent question. Gets us thinking about what hair was like, what was in, what was out, and how things changed over time. So, men in the Roman world, it was all about short hair. Short hair. If you had long hair, oh no. That was quite barbarian-like. It was a bit too louche. It was a bit too luxury-loving, a bit too Eastern in the views of both the Greeks and the Romans. Bar, of course, the Spartans, who got away with combing their long hair before they went into battle. And that was kind of all part of that Spartan image. But no, for the Romans, you wanted short hair. You could go to the barbers. You could have it trimmed. You could have it sort of singed. You could have it sort of, brought into a kind of, shape. You definitely didn't necessarily want grey hair as well. Romans were quite big on pulling out their grey hairs or dyeing their grey hairs. And this is where Year 6 class, we get into some dangerous territory indeed. Because if you wanted to dye your hair darker in the Roman world, there was no remedy or recipe better, it was felt, than to take some leeches, put them into a little vat of some red wine, and leave them not only to die there, but then to decay in the red wine for 40 days. Then mix up that nice kind of mulchy sort of thing, kind of leech and red wine mix, and then spoon it onto your hair to dye it a nice dark colour. Yes, 40-day-year-old rotted leeches in red wine was the secret hair dye of the ancient world. So, Year 6, don't try this at home, would be my suggestion. You obviously don't need to dye your hair at your age either. And kind of any of you out there, though, who do feel that they'd like to try dyeing their hair a la Roman style, can absolutely send us in a picture. But if you're kind of not in for dyeing your hair with leeches and red wine, then what are the other kind of things that you could go for? So, particularly if you're thinking about female fashion, now kind of hairstyle here was all about showing off your social status and your wealth. Now, how do you show off wealth through your hair? Well, you can have it cut quite nicely. You can have it sort of washed regularly so it's not kind of full of dirt and twigs and all of that sort of thing. But the most important thing you can do is show that you've got the time to spend on a really complex and extravagant hairdo. Because if you've got the time to do that, and the expertise, or being able to buy in the expertise, then what you're showing is that you don't have to work in any way for a living. You've got lots of luxury leisure time, and you can spend all of that having an extremely complex hairdo. So once we get out in the Roman imperial period, and we get out of the era of Augustus was all about returning to the roots of, kind of good old-fashioned Roman values after the excesses of the Roman Civil War period. So the Augustan imperial family had quite simple hairdos. It was all about going back to basics. But after that, things start to get more complex. And by the time we get into the kind of Flavian and Antonine periods, well, the more complex your hairdo, the better. Now, you can Google a few Flavian or Antonine hairdos, and frankly, they must take hours and hours and hours and hours. Romans would employ curling tongs. Yes, they had curling tongs. There would be a whole host of equipment they could use to curl hair up into higher and higher and higher bundles on top of the head, but their secret was also wigs. Yes, wigs. So the best thing you could do would be to have a wig made of real hair that they would procure from different parts of the Roman world, and you could have a choice selection of different colours in there, and then spend all the time and effort to have that made up into really complex designs that you could then just plonk onto your head, and you could have a full wig or you could have a half wig if you sort of wanted to have half your hair done up and then half done as part of the wig as well. So there you have it. Find yourself the most complex hairstyle you can manage and piled up on top of your head, and then you are a Roman hairstyle of the Roman elite. Absolutely indeed. And anyone else outside, of course, of Lee Edmonds' year 6 class who wants to try this and send in a photo, please do. So, Phil Richards, thank you so much indeed for your question. That's absolutely brilliant, and we've enjoyed that immensely. My one word of warning here is not to dye your hair yellow. Blonde hair, fine, but just don't dye your hair yellow, because if you do, you are signifying that you are a member of one of the oldest professions in the world, and I'm not talking about lawyers. So there we go. Right, moving on to Jeanette Judson, who has emailed in with a question. She's studying art history, and she's trying to get to grips with all the Greek and Roman myths that you come across within the world of particularly Northern and Italian Renaissance painting, and needs a bit of a guide, needs a helping hand to understand the crazy, weird world of the Greeks and Romans in relation to their myths, which of course got picked up big time in the Italian Renaissance as the kind of the world fell back in love, if you like, with the stories of the Greeks and Romans for at least the second time, before then kind of not eventually falling in love with the politics of the ancient Greek world, and particularly democracy in a few centuries later. But where do you start with the Greek and Roman myths? Because it is incredibly confusing. I think, Jeanette, there are 2 books that I would recommend. I'd be interested to hear what your recommendations are, what you turn to when you need to find out about the Greek and Roman myths. But particularly for me, it's Richard Buxton's Complete World of Greek Mythology, great place to start. But also, Philip Matiziak has done a great Greek and Roman myths compendium, and this is an excellent Christmas gift. If you can't get a calendar this year, which you can't, and you want to put something else classical in the stocking, then perhaps this might be a good idea. A brilliant kind of introduction to all the key Greek and Roman myths. So, Jeanette, I hope that is a helpful starting point for you as you weave your way through the world of the Greeks and Romans. Catherine Nancy has been in touch, asking about whether we've ever done a segment on My Roma. Yes, you're picking up on the fact that I had a cheeky visit with my wife Cassie to Rome in October half term, and we put a few pictures on Instagram and on Twitter of different places that we were loving as we came across our travels in Rome, which you kind of enjoyed and responded to, and kind of particularly cheese shops. There was a good mention of and a good response to. But Catherine's asking about whether there's a sort of list of off-the-radar things of My Roma which you like. And I think this would be a great idea to sort of share on the Facebook page, and perhaps you guys can pick it up in the Community Classics page as well. What are your top tips about places to go slightly off the radar in Rome? So if we start the list off now live, do throw in your own kind of ideas now on the comments as well about places in Rome that you particularly like, that are not ones that would come up in the top 10 in any guidebook. Then do put them in the comments now, and we can start making up that list, and then we'll get it on to the Facebook page, and then you can elaborate and take it forward together, so that everyone has the followers of this page, this group, this community, this family have an inside track for when they all next go to Rome. So where would I start? Well, I kind of, we had an experience when we went there that, kind of you can't avoid passing by some of the more well-known spots. And we had an absolutely horrific time trying to get around the Trevi Fountain because it was absolutely packed and completely overwhelmed in every way, shape and form. But between the Trevi Fountain and heading towards Piazza Navona and the Pantheon, you come across the kind of the Temple of Hadrian that has been built in now to be part of a kind of a more modern building, which I'm a big fan of that one. That's one of my favourites. In terms of weird shops to put on the list, the one that we discovered, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I have to put my hand up, it's not classical in any way, shape or form, was the Rome Rubber Duck shop. Yes, there is an entire shop in Rome dedicated to the sale of rubber ducks of all different shapes and sizes, and not just Roman style ones either. But this was totally bizarre to come across and absolutely a joy to walk into. And if you wanted, a brief break from the classical and the ancient, which I know sometimes we all need, then the Rome rubber duck shop is one that I particularly recommend. Then what would else be on my list? Getting down to, the Colosseum, obviously, beautiful, very, very nice. But what about going to the Theatre of Marcellus around the corner, which I know we've mentioned once or twice on this, because there are still apartments you can buy and live in, built into the Theatre of Marcellus, that is kind of there, for several million euros, it has to be said, but definitely worth thinking about if you fancy a bolt hole in Rome and you can afford that kind of thing, at that area around there. And that leads down to one of the oldest areas of actually Republican Rome, which is often overlooked, but it has the Temple of Heracles there, and there's a little kind of just space where you can just begin to get a sense of kind of what the earliest area of Republican Rome is like. So that's another kind of must for me in my Rome. And the other thing that I thought was brilliant this time around, is particularly I think has been elaborated in Rome since COVID, was that they've opened up a lot more of the walkways along the Tiber. So you can actually get right down onto the Tiber, and then kind of have the space for cycling along, but also walking along the edge of the Tiber, which was a great joy. And while you're doing that, go to Tiber Island as well. That was one of my personal favourites. There's a great ice cream shop on Tiber Island. Oh, Fiona, you've already found the Rome Duck Store. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Mark wants to go to the Mausoleum of Augustus. Yes, Mark. I was so disappointed. I thought it was open. I thought it had finally been opened as a proper tourist site, but it apparently had been opened as a tourist site and then been shut because they were then redoing the entire area around the tourist site, which means that it's going to be closed for some time to come. But if you are there and the Mausoleum of Augustus opens up, get in there if you can. I'm a big fan of the Areopagus Museum just next door as well. A great bit of kind of nice, brief, breathing spot of quiet and peace to enjoy that kind of monument. Definitely worth it. We were over in Trastevere a lot as well, and that's a joy as well, but not the kind of main centre of Trastevere around the main square. Nice to be in briefly, but it's got very, very, very kind of commercial now and touristy, so you want to get out a little bit, but very quickly you get into real residential areas of Rome outside of Trastevere, and that was a real joy. Diane talks about the bits of a statue of Asclepius built into the wall on Tiber Island. Keep an eye out for that, absolutely. So, Catherine, thank you so much for your question. Keep sending in your replies about what would be on your Rome secret list, and we can get them on the Facebook page for you to continue to add to. It would be the definitive collection of things to do and see in Rome. We've been asked also by Marietta Favalora Caldinale, talking about the scanning in ancient invisible cities. Why can't they do this in Egypt in finding tombs? We did do, Marietta, kind of one of the Ancient Invisible Cities programs about Cairo itself, but the kind of scanning we were using, it doesn't actually find things that are kind of not known about. This is a laser scanning, where you very much have to get into these spaces, and then what you're doing is using the laser to really get pinpoint accuracy, millimeter accurate imaging of the spaces that you are in, and then you overlay colour photography that you've taken onto the laser scan to then give it colour and depth and reality to produce a kind of perfect plan that you can then turn into a 3D visualization and virtual reality to be able to explore those spaces at your leisure. But what it can't do, that laser, is penetrate through walls or underground to actually see what might be on the other side. It has to be visible in the space itself. There are techniques, obviously, things like ground penetrating radar and kind of other kinds of magnetometers that they're called, to be able to kind of bounce down under the ground and get a sense of what is there under the ground. And that's used a huge amount in kind of archaeology now, to be able to pinpoint down where you then really focus your time and money and effort to excavate proper. But that kind of stuff won't work to get through a number of the thick walls or the kinds of things that they come across in the Egyptian tombs. So we do have a problem here, that there are some ways of getting a sense of what might be there, but there isn't really an alternative to getting involved and getting down and doing some excavation to really know what is behind. Leanne Webman Price, please could you scan my roof and see where the rain is getting in? Well, Leanne, actually, yeah, we might might be able to. With laser scanning, millimeter precision, we could work out potentially where those drops of rain are coming through. I feel very sorry for you, though, with all the rain that's been coming down recently. And kind of, I hope, fingers crossed, that if the laser scanning team can't get to you in time, then the good old-fashioned kind of routine of working out where the bucket needs to be placed under the ceiling might help a little bit as well. Leanne, you have our sympathy. So Marietta, thank you so much for your question. You also ask, what would be the 2 life lessons we need to learn from the ancient Greeks? Now, this is a question for you guys as well. What are your 2 life lessons that we need to learn from the ancient Greeks? I will offer just the 2, which you'll probably be able to pre-guess what I'm going to say. But yes, they are the maxims of Delphi. Gnothi seauton, know thyself, and meden agan, nothing in excess. Those would be my 2 guiding principles, life lessons from the ancient Greeks, but there are many others. Please, please, please let us know what are your favourites. Put them on the comments now as to what are your life lessons that you take from the ancient Greeks. I'll bet you that none of you suggest that it's leeches rotted for 40 days in red wine as an excellent hair dye. But, you know, kind of, if it is, all power to you. So we've got a question coming in from Gabriel Morgan as well. We are pounding through the questions today because there have been so many good ones coming in that I want to get to. What is the written evidence for independent theatre in classical Greece? Were there cabarets? Were there kind of sort of pop-up theatres? This is brilliant, a brilliant question, Gabriel. Thank you so much. So what's the evidence for kind of independent theatre in classical Greece? Now, I guess we have to really think about what's the context here, because theatre is not something in the ancient Greek world that you go to as a kind of entertainment in the evening, like we think of theatre today. It's not run by multiple different production companies that move around. Theatre was actually considered far too important for that. Theatre was actually something you did nearly always within both a collective and a religious context. So theatre is not something that's available 365 days a year in the Greek world. It is something which happens at very specific times and places as part of festivals, normally in honour of the god of theatre, of Dionysus, often within a sanctuary of Dionysus. And indeed, the very structures of theatre seem to emerge out of those religious spaces for the worship of Dionysus. The earliest stone-built theatre that we have in the Greek world, which is actually out in the deme of Thorakos, in Attica outside of Athens. The shape of it is not quite a perfect circle. They haven't got a semicircle. They haven't quite got into developing that yet. But you can tell where the origins of the space come from, because on either side of the stage is a small little temple, an altar to Dionysus. So you can see where we're coming from here, that this is the idea of it being independent theatre, of something that could just pop up in the middle of nowhere, is not something that the Greeks would really have been able to get their head around. Because when you were doing theatre, you were doing the worshipping of the gods, which then, of course, individuals wanted to do, but also cities and demes and local councils all had a stake in, because they wanted to make sure you were getting the worship of the god right, because it could reflect badly on them if you didn't. So in the Greek world, we don't tend to see sort of independent or pop-up theatre in any way, shape or form. We do see, and increasingly we're understanding through the archaeology, that we didn't just have theatres in the big capital. So it's not just the theatre of Dionysus in Athens, but just like the Thorakos deme theatre, there are now the remnants of deme theatres appearing across the 150 or so demes in Attica, the territory around Athens. Now, sometimes they're sharing them between demes, so they're sort of placed on boundary points. But clearly, down to the local borough council level, it was thought that there needed to be a good semi-permanent place where you could turn to and do theatre as part of your worshipping of the gods. When we get into the Roman world, this starts to change into something entirely different, because their theatre was not necessarily something that the Roman state thought was necessarily tied to religion, but also it wasn't really something that they were particularly keen on. They didn't, in the Republic or indeed in the Empire, didn't necessarily want to bring large groups of people together in a way that could get them thinking, because thinking might lead to all sorts of change. and Romans weren't necessarily into that, particularly if it was any kind of political change. So instead, in the Roman world, you see theatre being very much a pop-up thing. So the comedians, like Terence et al. Of the Roman world, are literally performing these plays that we read with joy now today on pop-up wooden stages that would be put up in different parts of the city of Rome to be able to do very quick sort of impromptu day-long performances, or do it a couple of times in a day, etc., before they're being dismantled and disappearing from the site entirely. They had no permanent space of theatre as we think about theatre and as the Greeks thought about theatre. Obviously, they did do permanent spaces for gladiatorial games and combat and all the sort of thing that made the community go, yeah, grr, and distracted them from all their problems. So thank you so much, Gabriel, for your question, but very, very different responses to the idea of whether you could have independent pop-up theatre between the Greeks and the Romans. Now, our time is flying by, and already we've got so many more good questions, which I haven't got time to go into, but we are going to very quickly take a tour through things that are going on and things that I wanted to flag for you. So there's been a great 10-day archaeological dig uncovering Roman remains in Chester, that kind of you can read about on the page. I particularly enjoyed this. The Cambridge pub, the Maypole, close to my heart, after having spent over a decade in Cambridge for my studies. They've got a car park being redeveloped near to them, and the parts of a Roman road has been found. So what the pub owner has brilliantly decided to do was to put a viewing panel through the hoardings, so that when you're at the pub having your pint, you can view through to the excavation, watch the archaeologists working away in progress, and the archaeologists have responded to this and started putting finds that they found up on a little shelf right in front of the viewing platform so that you can see them up close. This is absolute genius, and I think we should do much more of this. People can watch with drink in hand while our archaeological excavation unfolds. Greek mosaic floors are gracing the new subway stations in Athens. So there's a new line in Athens taking you direct from the airport out to Piraeus. And as with all the brilliant metro stations in Athens, they're coating it in real ancient excavations that have gone on while they've been developing the different stations. So that's a joy to be able to see. A trove of 24 ancient statues has been found immersed in a Tuscan spa. Now, they've been covered in beautiful preserving mud, hot mud, in this very nice spa near Siena for about 2,000 years. And so they're in pretty good condition, it turns out. So kind of you can now start to see some of these beautiful statues on display for the first time in a while, and by God, it looks like they've had a good facial. And then Indiana Jones 2023. Yes, it's coming up. The new Indiana Jones movie and Lego are bringing forward all their Indiana Jones related kit to re-release for 2023. Brilliant. If you're planning your January post-Christmas, come up to Warwick and see our drama festival. It's going to be on the 26th and 27th of January. It's going to be Aristophanes' Assembly Women. The Ecclesiad Zeusai is the play. Public performance on the Thursday night of the 26th, and then School's Day on the 27th with lots of cool talks. So do come along and book in for that if you can. The Classical Association of Scotland are starting evening classes in January across a whole host of different subjects to do with the ancient world, so you can get involved with those as well. If you're thinking about you're at school age 11 to 18, then get involved with the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association brand new Ancient World 2023 competition, which is going to be great fun. And then if you are near Oxford, the Ashmolean Museum is starting in January. Beginning of February time. Labyrinth, a whole new exhibition on Knossos. There are a couple of articles and blogs to point out to you. There's a nice bit of a podcast that I did about Cleisthenes for History Extra, and kind of why he's my hero, 15 minutes of fame for Cleisthenes. History Hit have done Could You Survive as a Roman Soldier on Hadrian's Wall? Yes, of course you could. We've done a podcast on Zeus for History Hit as well. Get in and hear about the King of the Gods. It's going to be the first of a whole series of ones about the ancient gods. And Against the Law, I've done a fascinating series, all gynecologically orientated about the ancient world. So do kind of listen in there and you can hear about some brilliant stuff alongside the Classics podcast. Epic narratives written by our youngest writers and narrated by many great names, and then some lesser known and lesser deserving people like myself as well. So do have a listen in to those. We are almost out of time. How time flies. Things I need to talk to you about. We have said we told you about Christmas, no calendars, but the book inserts are available. We are also perilously close to 10,000 followers on the Facebook page. Perilously close, people. So can we get there as a Christmas gift? Think about all of your friends who would love to join the Facebook page. Point it out to them that they could tip us over the 10,000 mark, and there will be celebrations galore and special videos from me when we hit the 10,000 mark. So do try and pull us over the 10,000 mark before Christmas, and that would be a great way to see out 2022. Have we got time for one more question? Yes, I think we have. Alexis Brown. We have ancient Greece and ancient Egypt. So why don't we refer to it as ancient Italy rather than ancient Rome? Now this is a brilliant question. Well done, Alexis. Yes, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, but it's not ancient Italy, it's ancient Rome. And it just goes to show you how much within the sphere of Roman history that we talk about, not Italian history, Roman history, Rome has come to dominate the entire narrative, just as it subsumed Italy and the Mediterranean under the title of the Roman Empire and the Roman world. And that weird shorthand that we've agreed on, the kind of ancient Rome as a shorthand for a much wider geographical locality than just the city of Rome itself. What we use ancient Greece and ancient Egypt at the same time. So there you go, Alexis. You have put your finger on one of the fundamental differences in the way that the ancient Greek, the Egyptian and the Italian world worked, and thus how we have these shorthands that have emerged for how we talk about them. So there you are as our final question to take us through to the end of this Q&A. But there is going to be one more Q&A, last word from me, before Christmas, the 8th of December. So only 2 weeks to wait. 8th of December, 5 p.m. UK time, we will be here for a final Q&A before we all go our separate ways for the festive season and hopefully have some good downtime and cheer. So please do join me on the 8th of December. In the meantime, get your My Roma recommendations up on the Facebook page and we'll have a little look at that when we come back next time. Hopefully we will have crossed the 10,000 mark and there can be celebrations galore and of course cake. Carolyn Hickham, well done. Congratulations once again on winning the prize giving this time. Do get in touch and tell us what you would like as your prize. And all of you, thank you so much for your wonderful questions. I'm so sorry for the ones we didn't get a chance to answer this time. We will prioritise them for next time. See you all on the 8th. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, look after yourselves and one another, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.